We begin tonight with what a difference a debate makes. The first Democratic debate is history now. A new poll just out today shows significant gains for Senator Kamala Harris, also for Elizabeth Warren, and bad news for Joe Biden. The CNN poll found the former vice president maintaining his frontrunner status, but down at 22%, down 10 points since May. California Senator Harris has vaulted into second place at 17 points, up 9 points for her, while Senator Elizabeth Warren also gained, in her case, 8 points to come in third and overtaking Senator Bernie Sanders, who went down 4 points. Kamala Harris's rise comes from a breakout challenge to Biden over his comments about working with segregationist senators and his opposition to federally mandated busing back in the 70s. Senator Cory Booker, who also criticized Biden's comments about segregationists, took issue with Biden said Friday about African-American teenagers. Here goes Biden again.
We got to recognize that kid wearing a hoodie may very well be the next poet laureate and not a gangbanger.
As a guy growing up as a young black guy in America who was followed and surveilled, faced that indignity and even the danger of that, being perceived to be a threat. Again, this is just another example of just conversations that or lessons that Joe Biden shouldn't have to learn.
For more, I'm joined by Donna Edwards, former Maryland Democratic Congresswoman and Washington Post contributing columnist, and a great one at that. I mean, I'm sorry, who am I to say, but you are a great writer. Cornell Belcher, Democratic pollster, thank you. And Howard Fineman, a veteran news analyst. I'm serious. I think I'm giddy about politics today because it shows that nights matter. Donna, people watch. They pay attention, they make judgments, they change their minds. It shows that there's lights at home and people are home and they're paying attention.
Well, that's right. And this was the beginning, and Joe Biden got punched hard. And the question now is how he's going to rebound or whether he can. Well, there are two candidates.
What's your bet? Was it one off for her, one down for him, or is this a trend-setting evening last week?
I have no money, so I'm not betting. But, I think there were two candidates who are rising, Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris, and there are two candidates who are falling, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. And now the question is, getting from now until the next debate and into the fall, who the survivors are.
Cornell, let's talk about Bernie for having some fun here, because he was like Christopher Lloyd the other night in Back to the Future. He's just waving his arms around, talking about revolution and all. Where we are going, we won't need roads. I mean, what are we talking about? Whereas Biden looked like he was actually out of his element, like it was a strange environment to be in, like to have all this diversity around him, all this competition, all this modern quick talk. He wasn't really ready for it.
Well, it's surprising that he wasn't really ready for it, because I can't believe that he wasn't better prepped, because his response to Harris hitting him, he looked shocked, and he actually raised his voice at her, and I was sitting there in the studio and I couldn't believe that a veteran like this wasn't prepared for that. So he completely fumbled it, and he got hit, and he got hit hard.
He didn't look at her, by the way. He looked down.
He didn't look at her at all, which is a problem for a woman. And he yelled, and he visibly raised his voice. A no, which you should never do. He sort of lost his cool. So she clearly shook him up. And what's interesting here is the numbers have tightened, but he still has a 12 or 13 point lead among African Americans and a larger lead among seniors. I predict that number among African Americans will continue to shrink. I don't have any money, but I'm betting that Harris over the next month or so will in fact take the lead here.
Yeah, that's the norm, Howard. That's the norm, where one person knocks another person down and a third party benefits.
Yeah. That's often the case, and you can't tell when the field is this big who ultimately is going to benefit from the shakeup. But there's no doubt, the bottom line in this, and I've watched, I don't know, I've covered maybe 100 debates in my distinguished veteran career with NBC and MSNBC. I don't think it's rare that I've seen one that dramatic, that you could see right in that moment the politics changing. Now, whether Kamala Harris is ultimately the beneficiary, you don't know. But what you do know is that Joe Biden, if not in free fall, is in a slow leak situation here right now, and how he turns that around, I don't know. By the way, getting the endorsement of the black woman mayor of Atlanta is impressive, but is not necessarily going to staunch the flow, I don't think.
What I liked about the other night was...
Full disclosure, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom is my client, and I think they needed her after.
Did they time this for later?
Did they hold her back? I don't know the answer to that, but I think they had to pull her out.
Okay,
now
here's
stop the bleeding.
What I find great and I hope the audience right now who's watching this program right now live likes about it. What we thought was going on in the spin room, what we thought was going on covering it down there, what we saw at close range, what the candidates seemed to know, what the major main bar reporters like Dan Baltz, the Washington Post, they all saw the same thing. And this poll shows the people at home saw exactly the same thing. So we're all on one page for the first. This thing about fake news is BS because the polls reflected exactly what the best straight reporters and the opinion people like us saw what was there.
Chris.
Biden had a terrible night. Kamala came on like gangbusters. And my question, you go back to the Queen question. I'll go back to Don on this. She had destroyed Brett Kavanaugh to tears. She went after, she took apart Bill Barr, who's one tough customer. Why didn't Biden see he was the third strike? Why didn't he know she was going to do exactly the same thing to him?
You know what? I think a lot of them watched the night before. They watched the Wednesday night debate, civil night debate, and maybe they thought that it was going to be the same thing. Everybody traveling in their lane and just answering questions. Wrong, wrong, and wrong. And I think in the debate coming up, somebody's going to want to distinguish themselves, and they're going to try to figure out how to do it. And now Kamala Harris has to demonstrate not just that she can give a punch, but that she can take one. And we haven't seen that from her yet.
How do you go after somebody who's only really a first-term senator, who was you go at her from the left or the right? Where do you go?
You go after a record. Look, none of these campaigns are paying me, so I shouldn't be giving this advice. But you go after her record, and I got to say, they're going to have to do some inoculating on her record because Joe almost went at it on the stage because he's a defender, she's a prosecutor.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot to go after in a prosecutor's office, especially when you're talking about a liberal, progressive base in party.
Well, somebody to her left would have to do that. Who's to her left?
I think a lot of them are actually
on criminal justice.
To her left on criminal justice issue. I think her weakness will be criminal justice. On the criminal justice, I think it would be an argument. You put away a lot of young black men in jail, and how do you account for that?
Right. That's the possibility. Everybody's writing about the blowback. I don't see any blowback yet.
No.
On Kamala Harris.
Okay.
But you're right. It could be on that. And by the way, out in California, the people I've been talking to out there, her record as Attorney General is mixed, not only on race, but in general on getting things done. The rap on her out there was great on TV, not necessarily getting stuff done.
Yeah. Well, look for Elizabeth Warren in this, because there where you see somebody who slides up and has had a steady progress, week by week. Look for Elizabeth.
And this was 2000. I think it's 2004 where you saw a lot of different candidates raised, be it Clark, be it Dean, be it Curry, and you remember Joe Lieberman was even the lead for a while in 2004. I think we're at topsy-turvy time.
I also think it comes back to the notion of sequence and dynamics. Come next to Iowa, it's Iowa. It's not South Carolina. It's Iowa,
right.
White Iowa, and Elizabeth Warren seems sort of Midwestern in a way, even though she's from Massachusetts now. She seems Oklahoma a little bit, right? She goes there, then she goes and wins at home in New Hampshire. Then she goes. So then the African-American voters thinking, Elizabeth Warren's doing really well. Yes. Am I going to bring Kamala into this, or am I going to stick?
That dynamic changes. I remember one from 2008, Pluff, and he said it time and time again. It's not a national race. It's a state-by-state race, so that the dynamics will change state by state. If she does well in New Hampshire and do well in Iowa, I think the African-American voters will be looking at her differently in South Carolina.
Warren started out her campaign talking to black voters, especially talking to black women. She's smart on this, and so I think there's a lot of time between now and certainly the fall and
well, here's a little.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.